Hey, this is Mark Henry, author of Dancing with Energy, Healing, Magic, and Mysticism, here to talk to you more about the occult and the paranormal. Well, today I'm going to be talking about the spiritual marks of intimacy. And what I mean by that is the dynamics and effects, spiritual effects of being intimate with someone, especially physically intimate with someone. First of all, and I've touched on this in some of my other videos, is that any time that we develop a connection with somebody, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a relationship, a romantic relationship, it can be formulating a new friendship, it can be a therapeutic relationship, like if you were a counselor or someone like that. But it's mainly when we extend ourselves out and we try to reach out and connect with somebody. And when we can bond with that, what typically happens is that we have chords. You know, the Polynesian shamanism, Sahunas referred to this as Aka chords. And these are just energetic chords, sometimes called psychic chords, that go and connect our chakras to these people. And these chords go out, and as long as it's kind of a positive and healthy relationships, these are actually good chords because it helps us empathize with other people. It helps us, be energetically available to them. It just helps us bond. It's the spiritual correlate of what we do when we naturally formulate relationships. And this kind of brings us to this particular topic, is that while this is true and this is normal for all relationships, is that it is especially true whenever there is physical intimacy involved. In fact, it I think is even more so, because that is kind of a physical coupling that is very much into our DNA, into our genes, and that extends out to this particular energetic connection. And let's say that you were into a relationship, or maybe it was just a casual type of thing, and you decide, I no longer want to be with this person or interact with them in this particular way. These chords persist, and they will persist even if it's not a good situation. So the way that this happens is that when you develop a connection with somebody, and there is, again, the transfer of information. Sometimes if you're very empathetic and a very sensitive person, you may be able to pick up on their moods, what's going on inside of them through these chords. That's what I mean by the transfer of information. And let's say that you no longer want to deal with this person. Well, that can still happen. These chords remain, and that you still could be picking up on things, and it may be things you don't want to pick up on because you no longer want to deal with this person, and maybe they have some issues or some things that are just too much for you to bear or to handle or want to at this point. You're still going to be subject to this information. That is a main kind of point I have for this particular video, is that this type of thing persists. Now, if you are on a long-term relationship, you don't have to deal with this very much but what I mean is that you deal with this slowly, but what if you're somebody who has just casual partners and you're physically intimate with them, and it, one after another? Well, you are formulating these chords with a lot of different people, and yet that information is going into your auric field, into your chakras, and into your subconscious mind. Some of these things that are going through to you can actually, if you're not aware of them, can make it seem like it's your stuff when it's their stuff, especially if you're a sensitive person. So that's my biggest point about all this, is that these things persist, and I'll tell you a little bit about what can be done at the end of this video. The second thing that can happen is that through physical intimacy. And again, it isn't primarily through it, but by formulating these bonds, by having conversations, these sorts of things, you can actually, the person, if they have some parasitic entities that are feeding on them, they can also go into your field and start to do the same thing to you. If you want to think of like fleas jumping from dog to dog, or from the ground to a dog, or any other type of animal. That's how it can work. These parasitic entities are attracted to certain things. Vulnerabilities. You not taking care of yourself, or have a medical illness or a psychological issue, not sleeping as much. These sorts of things can actually take advantage of that and feed on your energy. When you are extremely strong and you are extremely well and at 100%, it's much less likely for these things to attack you, because it's almost like they're not attracted to that. It's too much of a thing for them to pierce. However, if you are someone who seems to have a lot of problems in life and are trying to get yourself together, these parasitic entities will try to latch onto you and feed on the energy, feed on the energy from your chakras. And this is something that I consider to be part of the human condition, because of course no one is perfect, and most people have these sorts of things, and yet I bring this up because it especially, again, happens when we're physically intimate. In fact, there are classes of these things that will feed on lust and energy that is very intense and very powerful, and all of that energy, that lower chakra energy especially, is very enticing. It's like fast food to them, and that's how they empower themselves. That's how they get their nourishment. Their life energy is through feeding on other things. And this shouldn't be a surprise. If you look at our universe, especially our animal universe, there are constantly there are physical things that do this. Mosquitoes are feeding on our blood, and again, ticks and fleas and all these other types of things. So it is less a judgment on these particular beings, but to realize that, because everything has, in a way, a right to survive in their own way, and yet this is something that most people aren't aware of. Also, I guess number 3, and this is kind of a minor point, is that energetically, when we're talking about physical intimacy, just when our auric fields are in contact with each other during acts of physical intimacy, is that you can actually tell, especially if you're sensitive, how when one person is experiencing something, maybe an elevation, that energy can flow through them into you, and it could amp you up through that energy transfer. So I think that there is so much going on when we are physically connected with somebody and we're going through acts of physical connection. There's so much that goes beyond what we can see. And again, there are effects, there are consequences, and there are effects, spiritual effects, from these types of interactions with people. Again, the thing that I think would be most impactful would be somebody who I imagine would have, might be in alternative lifestyles, polyamorous open relationships, where they could possibly be in relationships with multiple people at once, or there's somebody who's single and they're just being physically I'm watching how I'm saying this so that YouTube doesn't mess with my video too much. Being physically connected or intimate with multiple people within a short period of time, because again, these connections, these things are happening, and you're subject to it, and they are too. people who are addicted to this sort of thing, I imagine, are really have a tough time with it if they're not aware of these things or how to do what needs to be done in order to remedy it. I've known people who had substance addiction, gambling addiction, and this other type of addiction. And with this other element, it really messes with their mind and their heart. So what do we do about it? Okay. So the solution and the remedies are things that would take entire videos to go over. So I'm going to tell you what can be done, and then you all, if you are interested, if you feel like this applies to you or a friend, you can go and look into this stuff. The first thing that needs to happen is that these cords just need to be cut, especially if they're no longer serving you and you're no longer using them. Some can turn negative. Some people want to maintain this type of relationship even when the other person doesn't, and then the cord kind of turns negative, and then there is, there isn't such good energy between people anymore. So there are processes for cutting these cords. I mentioned Huna, and I mentioned the Aka cords and all of that, and it's easy to look up how to do this, going through kind of a meditation and cutting these cords from these people and just letting the energy dissipate. That's not a big thing. It's something that's very simple to do. The second sort of thing that needs to be done is about the parasitic entities. This needs to be done, I think, with most people, to do this periodically, because the parasitic entities are the ones that are found to be the most covert, sneaky, and they can kind of get in, and you won't always know because they can be very subtle. You might think that there's a bad mood that you have, there is some things going on, weird thoughts. Oh, that's just my brain, that's just my mental health condition, or whatever it is. And it could be those things, but it also can be some of these entities that are there in your aura that need to be cleared out. I typically do this by contacting my spirit guides and asking them to remove it. A lot of times our guides need our permission to do certain things because they have to follow the laws of free will and universal rules and things like that. Other ways of doing it is doing spiritual cleanses with certain herbs, taking spiritual baths, that sort of thing. Doing magic. There are also certain entities, whether it be angels or demons, that can remove these sorts of things. So again, this isn't something that is difficult to do. You just have to kind of look into how to go about doing it. But the point of the video is to let everyone know that these things do happen, and they happen behind the scenes, and it's easy to, even if you're aware of them, to forget about them. So I just want to tell everyone to be safe, take care of your energy field, take care of your chakras, cut those cords to those people that no longer serve you or your well-being, and I will see you in another video. And of course, please subscribe and like, and check out the links in the description. Take care.